Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Tales podcast. Delighted today. Part of my history is about working in development areas with internal audit. And it started at Barclays. And from Barclays, it's grown into other different areas, right across pharmaceuticals, into insurance. And it's interesting when you start to map the people I started to work with at the beginning of my work in internal audit. One of them was Paul Day. And Paul Day now is at Standard Chartered, just 6 months in. So today you'll hear from Paul about his journey. You'll hear about internal audit. You'll start to understand, if you don't, how that fits in the work. 'Cause it's a critical part in financial services and pharma and other industries. So it's that bit. But what I love today is just listening to some of the threads that he has through and the stand up for what you believe in, the purpose side. And it's a bit that sometimes is overlooked when we're looking at internal audit work, risk work, compliance work, that we don't get to that purpose. So listen in, check in with what Paul's got to say. Love your feedback at the end of it. Paul Day, we've had a history with connection work, stories. We keep running into each other on different pieces of work, and it's so nice to get the chance to talk today. But for those who don't know you, like I do, maybe just a bit of background, who you are. Yeah,
sure, Colin. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to just to share some thoughts. Look, so by way of background, I think I'm approaching the end of my third decade in financial services assurance, and that sounds like a lot of assurance. It's been across external audit and internal audit. It's been working in industry, but also working in consulting with big firms. And sort of chronologically, after university, I joined Arthur Andersen and spent 10 years doing external audit across financial services, right up to the point where Andersen rather spectacularly stopped existing. And in the bits of the year when I wasn't doing year-end financial statement attest work, I was working with clients, helping them reduce risk by understanding process risk and control. And that's a theme that goes all the way through my career. Anyway, after 10 years there, I joined Barclays Internal Audit. That was my first internal audit gig. That was a really special team, worked with many superstars. It's clear looking back that there was something special happening in that team at that point. But then after a decade as a cost center, I sometimes say I returned to Andersen, which had now become Deloitte in the UK, and I led the UK financial services internal audit practice. And I learned many things there. There's some wonderful people there. But in particular, I learned the power of consulting with others. The power of sharing your views with others, with a broad range of experts, and the power that you can generate with that. Then I moved back into industry. I joined Lloyds Bank. I led the internal audit function there. That is a really amazing organisation, really very purpose-led. A lot of great people working collaboratively to create great outcomes for their customers and clients. I had a wonderful time there. And then I blinked and 6 months at Standard Chartered Bank have flown past. So I had the same job there as at Lloyds. I lead the internal audit function. I'm blessed with a fantastic audit team that operates again in a really purpose-led organisation. So that's sort of my background. I think of myself as really in sort of three words. One would be inquisitive or curious. I keep asking questions. It's one of the joys of my job working in internal audit is it gives me a fantastic place to ask questions like, how does it work? Why does it work that way? Could it work better? Should it work better? Is it optimized from a cost or a risk perspective, etc.? And Colin, I was the kid that when the radio stopped working, I'd reach for the screwdriver and start taking it apart. It was normally unsuccessful in the repair job, but I was curious to know how it worked. And then the second word I'd use to describe myself is direct. The business of assurance is about expressing views to others on how on the accuracy of something or how well something works. And I found in my career you have to be prepared to be direct at that. The phrase of willing to speak truth to power was created for internal audit functions. Yeah? I mean, we need to be polite, but directness is a core attribute, and I think I'm polite but direct.
Can we squirrel off that before you get to your third? Because for people listening who don't know internal audit, so I get it, and I think it's one of the best setups that's ever been put in place in an organization in terms of the 3 lines of defense, but the third line of defense. It'd be nice to hear just in a potted, when you're talking to your non-audit friends, what the hell you do, what do you say?
You'll be delighted to know I do actually have some non-audit friends. When they ask, I say I am here to protect the organization, to protect it, to help protect it. We work for the board, and we tell the board whether the systems of process and control work well enough to manage risk. So it's a sort of combination, advisor, critical friend, but when done well, it can add tremendous amounts of value to the board and to management. Colin, you'll have heard the analogy about the racing car, and where the role of the auditor is to tell the organisation that the system of speedometer, brakes, all the other control activities, that those work well enough so that the driver can go fast.
Which I love. And I think there's been some recent history with financial services organizations who've been under regulatory scrutiny. And that ability not to go fast or hold back affects the culture. So a lot of this is about assurance, to allow the culture to one of assurance to drive forward at speed, or for those listening, to be able to react well to client needs in the moment.
Colin, that's absolutely right. And look, from my perspective, the internal audit industry has got has to look back at whether it did a decent enough job in the period leading up to the last the global financial crisis, and we have to look at ourselves and say, did we collectively and individually do a decent enough job? If it was running hot, if the systems are running hot, were we calling it out? And really for the purpose of seizing that opportunity to make the future better. How might we react differently, in the future? Are we prepared to say, guys, before we invest in this business, in growth in this business, have we invested enough in the infrastructure, in the back office, so that it can go fast and also, in control?
So I really see the curiosity piece coming in there, and I see the directness as well, because we know a few people like yourself who have the willingness to speak directly. But it's not just getting you heard; it's about getting things done as well. It's the ability to influence without authority sometimes to get things done as well. And your third, what was your third?
Yeah, the third word I'd use to describe myself is driven. I feel I must take every opportunity and really maximize the value of that opportunity. And really grandly to make the world better, or at least to make that bit of the world that's in front of you better. I'm a big believer in Brailsford's accumulation of marginal gains. So if you can make all the little things work just a little bit better, overall you can get a much more powerful outcome. And then of course sometimes we're presented with big opportunities. I feel we shouldn't waste those. I feel we should seize those with both hands and really, really get as much value out of them as we can.
I love it. So curiosity, directness, and the driven things that, and a lot of your work is about marginal gains, isn't it? I mean, it is, in some ways, it's a detecting in the risk and control framework, but it is about marginal gains to allow the business to operate in a better way. I wanted to pick out on a few things in there before we go into your leadership history, because there's something for me about when we look at the types of risk in business. a lot of people don't understand the risks that can be in a financial services or a pharma business, the amount of risks and the type of risks that you are responsible for and accountable for. It's almost like MI6 avoiding a terrorist attack in a lot of ways. There's a lot of work that goes on, which is unseen. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, the classic way of thinking about risk, and certainly in financial services, would be there are financial risks, which are risks that the organization takes in the expectation of earning a reward from those risks. So that, classically would be credit risk or market risk or, risks like that. And then they're supported by non-financial risks, i.e. the risks that the organization has as a result of the way it's structured itself to take and manage those financial risks. But look, financial services, whether it's banking or asset management or insurance, it is like other businesses. It is not about risk avoidance or risk elimination. It is about understanding risk, pricing it adequately, and then managing and monitoring it. There is very little reward in this world without taking risks.
I love it. So let's go to your leadership story, because you talked about the magic. I'd love to go back to what you were talking about, the Barclays piece, because there was some magic there. Then you talked a lot about purposes we went through, but just share a bit of your leadership experience for those who are listening, thinking, so how do I move on in my career? What would you share?
I think I've accumulated sort of leadership attributes, leadership beliefs, in a sort of eclectic mix. I've learned different things from different people, and I've been blessed with working for and working with some fantastic people, some fantastic leaders, and I've tried to take some of their strengths and sort of blend them together into me. When I think in particular at Barclays, where honestly I think that was a really special team with many stars. And actually, if you look at where the people that were in middle and senior management roles in that audit function then, many of them are in very senior roles in audit functions and other risk functions around the world. And I mean, to call out a few, I think Mark Carawan was the person who set the original tone goals there. James Turner, Mary McNiff, Nadir Dara. There are many superstars there who have gone on after their Barclays audit careers to have astonishing careers in leading audit functions or risk functions of some of the world's largest organizations. And in particular, I think were at Barclays, the leadership tone was sort of really excellence in everything. All the little components mattered. Yes, set out a strategy. Let's not do strategy every day and every week. Let's set out a strategy and then let's try and execute brilliantly on that strategy. And every bit matters. So there were many wonderful leaders at Barclays. I like to think that I did my bit and grew, helped to grow the next generation of leaders there.
If you had to pick one or two of those, because if you look at where, so Mary McNiff now is Citi, very senior, running basically the US is my understanding, and then you've got James, very senior in Prudential, and then you've got Mark Carawan, who crafted a lot of those careers. Just tell us a bit about him, because I found he's such a powerful character. In there.
Mark was still is an astonishing leader. He, the thing that he did outstandingly well was to create followership. He was demanding. He was into a lot of the detail. Many of us wondered where he found the minutes and hours in the day to cover as much space as he did. But he created a strength of followership, a strength in a number of followers that is simply astonishing. And the individual personal loyalty to Mark was astonishing. He also, he taught me many things. I learned many things, but in particular the importance of having frameworks. having sensible frameworks for how we might approach things, for quality, the importance of frameworks for how we develop our people, the importance of spending effort in getting to know people as individuals, and how we may put the next stretch opportunity in front of them. I suspect, like many others, when I look back on my career, I look back at moments when when the opportunity in front of me pulled me outside of my comfort zone, and of course. That's when you find out most about yourself, what you're capable of, what those around you are capable of, how to lead in those moments. And as I've got older and more experienced, I find it super rewarding to find those opportunities for my team. What's the right next career opportunity? What's the next stretch opportunity? What might they develop? From that opportunity in front of them. I think you learn a little bit from doing a straightforward job very well. You learn a lot and receive a lot of credit for doing difficult things very well. I actually think the greatest satisfaction and reward is reserved for things which are known to be broken, or which are incredibly challenging, and working out a way to somehow address those, somehow fix those, somehow turn it into a success. And we learn most about ourselves not by doing the easy things, but by taking on the difficult challenges, taking on the things that are hard.
What I loved about the Barclays culture, because we got to experience, we worked with Barclays for years, but I only met Mark 3 times. And one of those was he was walking past me on a flight from South Africa back. He nodded his head and that was it. But he trusted myself and a number of other people to drive that. But he spent and invested so much time in people, but gave them space. So to have that, and the amount he invested in the academies we ran, but was a very light touch in terms of what we did in them, was superb.
Colin, I think that's right. But the thing that Mark did was trust and empower his team, and including you as a virtual member of the team, right? To trust and empower that team to build and deliver those academies. And look, I'd been a huge vocal supporter of the need for those academies, and so of course when the ask for a senior leader to stand up, to go to that academy, to lead it for the 5 days, came up. Of course, I felt I really should put my money where my mouth had been for the last few months, and so I volunteered to lead it. And if you'll recall, Colin, that was when you and I launched the first BIA Academy. And of which there were many, many more. And in fact, just earlier today, I was talking to the Foundation Academy, to 35 new joiners in the Standard Chartered Audit Academy. And those events always have been, and I think always will be, really, really important. As much as anything, to create a networked team, a team that are connected with each other.
And I think the other thing, just finally on that, which for me, Mark did, was he put pressure on people. He was, as you say, knew the detail, and you wondered where, the emails that used to come early in the morning, and you knew they were coming. So there was a pressure there, but it was a good pressure in terms of excellence, drive, to take people. So going back to your driven piece, I think there's a number of people who took that work ethic from Mark going forward. I think he had a big impact. Yeah.
There's a sort of optimal pressure, isn't there? There's too much pressure is just wrong and unfair on people. I remember typing the email footer into my Outlook settings to say, I'm sending this email at a time of my choosing. Yeah. And if it's outside your working hours, I don't expect you to reply. Of course, we want people to feel under some pressure. We want to have some performance expectations, and we need to temper it with a suitable work-life balance, allowing people to do the things which are important to them. And some of those things will be outside work, and we absolutely must allow people to make time for that.
Yeah, no, agreed. So that needs a nice link into the purpose-led business, because you mentioned that a few times around here. And for people listening from the outside, just being controversial, but financial services purpose-led businesses sometimes get a bad rep from this. But my experience of a lot of those businesses are purpose-led, yeah, in terms of how they operate. So explain a bit more about what you mean by that, yeah.
Yeah, so look, I mean, as I've got older and hopefully a little bit wiser, the importance of working for a purpose-led organization it's just more important to me in my middle age. I'm blessed in working for an organization at the moment which is so purposeful. I mean, it's got a brand promise of here for good. And if you just think about the amount of prosperity, the economic activity that a retail and trade bank can create across Asia and Africa, it's a wonderful opportunity. And that's before you get to the climate opportunity in those countries to influence for the better the climate challenge that we all find ourselves in. So the purpose of the organization is important. Of course, in the internal audit space, which has been my bag for the last 20 or so years, it's a really purposeful role, right? Purpose to protect the organization, guardian for the organization. People talk to you about analogies like that. It's improve the world, or at least a bit of the world in front of you. It's a real opportunity to do that. We've been doing a little bit of strategy work, actually, in my team at the moment. And the thing which has come through really strongly is the importance to our group of leaders of being purposeful, and the importance of being clear on what we think that purpose is to align all of our people. So that clarity on role, purpose, what we're trying to build, what we're trying to do, I just think it's super important.
And when it rolls down into the leadership team, because and I struggle with this myself. I have my purpose. As an individual, I have my purpose and drive. But then we get to the real way you make your money, which is you recruit people and then you develop people and you lead people in a way, which in some ways said, well, that's your purpose, Colin. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I've got my purpose. So how do you blend your work with different organizations? You talked about, Anderson, which I share with you, which hasn't, I've now taken off the CV in some ways, and then you move into the different places where you're consulting purpose, and then you go into Standard Chartered where you're part of driving that purpose. How do you get your team to understand that? How do you work with that? Yeah.
Two things. One is, I think just having great people, understanding what it is that makes them great, and trying to stretch them gets you, the first bit of the way. The second step, I think, is with co-creation. So, look, it's important to me that we don't take Paul's purpose and make that the purpose for the function, for the team, for the whole team. But we take our leadership teams, with a few layers of people, and we together co-create what we think that future will be. I'm a big believer in the power of markets and the power of innovation and creativity in that world. And look, as marvelous as a few hundred line blueprint created by Paul, as marvelous as that might be, it'll be not nearly as powerful and strong as the blueprint created by the collective minds of the leaders and the managers in those teams. So one of the things we've been doing in our Standard Chartered audit strategy work is giving others the opportunities to see a straw man direction and then to contribute towards it, to say we like that, we like those aspects, don't like those aspects, etc. So that clarity of direction, but also the opportunity for people to co-create it, I think is really important in gelling that team together. I'm a big believer. I have a lot of faith that if we're all heading in the same direction, we will get we'll be able to get a long way in that direction. I think the saying goes, if you want to travel fast, travel alone. But if you want to travel far, travel together. We'll get a lot further as a team if we can get everyone aligned and excited by the same destination.
And I heard an expression a while ago, but it stuck with me about nested purposes. And I'd never thought about that concept, about how you get a leadership team to nest their purposes together, to work it, because we want diversity. We want different views and points of view. And one of the things that struck me when we were talking earlier was about this learning you've had in your career about standing up for things that are really important to you. But those change over time, and our experience of working with different people changes over time. Tell me a bit more about this stand up, because it's, in some ways, people see internal audit as a process structure, but this stand up is key in terms of what you do. Yeah.
Can I just go back to the diversity in the teams of the skill sets? I also believe in the power of diversity and inclusion, and bringing all those different diverse aspects, skill sets, thinking. You'll get a better outcome with more diverse thinking. I mean, as marvelous as a team of 10 Pauls might be, 10 people that look different to me will actually have a much better outcome. Someone said to me, inclusion and diversity aren't quite the same thing, are they? I heard a brilliant quote last week, which was, diversity is in being invited to the party, but inclusion is being persuaded to dance the conga. We've really got to get people to feel like they belong, because in fact they actually do belong.
Yeah.
To go back to standing up for what you believe in. Look, I mean, maybe this is my internal audit lens on, through my business life, but to be successful in business, you need to work out which are the fights you want to fight, which are the battles that need to be fought, and which ones, frankly, will just get you bogged down in the weeds. And there's a bit of wisdom and judgment and art in that. But certainly the business leaders that have really succeeded, they normally have a strong belief, and they're prepared to dig their feet in the pursuit of that belief. I mean, there's a little bit now about in the world of assurance of seeing the big stuff, not necessarily sweating all the tiny details, and if the details get in the way of making the big points, then you can't see the wood for the trees. So the much more powerful to be able to connect the dots, work out what the big themes are, and persuade people that those themes are what's important, than to have the list of 500 low level things. But look, standing up for what you believe in, standing up for what you think is right, I think is it's very important. My father was a World War II nerd, and as a child, I was made to watch hours, days, probably even weeks of documentaries. But one of the things that came out of that is for me the importance of standing up for what's right for your beliefs. I mean, my wife's grandmother fled the Nazis as they swooshed across Europe in the very late 30s, and when you have those kind of personal connections with those things, you feel it's important to stand up for what's right.
Yeah, and we've got obviously now we've got the Queen's legacy happening in our world, but if you look at some of the things that she did, it's not always about front foot leadership, it's about servant leadership, it's about service towards those, and I think that's critical. And I think also the thing that you said that resonated to me is a lot of people think that we have loads of resources to deploy to what we think is important, but actually part of the leader's role is to make the choices about what is important collectively to what we tackle and what we go for in what we do.
Colin, that's right. I think one of the other roles of a leader, which is perhaps not talked about as much as it could be, is when you've got a great team and they've got great stretch opportunities, and they've got a team of all the different diverse skill sets you need for that activity. There's then a real power of just standing back and getting out of the way. and and allowing those leaders to lead, and not feeling you need to look over everyone's shoulder all of the time.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's a tricky one to do because, I'm going to ask you the question about, which I'm starting to do in all of these podcasts, which is thinking about the biggest experiment in your life, that's in leadership life or life in general, that you've taken that's led you to be successful. But there is a piece that, as a leader, giving that authority and accountability to people is scary sometimes. And I'm a control freak. I will frequently admit it and if you take the control out of the control freak, all you've got is the freak. So that is one of the biggest challenges to do as a leader, and it's difficult. And I think for me, if I think about you, that's one of your strengths in what you do. So just tell me a bit about your experiment. What's the biggest experiment that you've run that's had a biggest impact in your life?
The one for me was probably my last job at Lloyds, where I was blessed with a wonderful leadership team in the audit function there, and they worked really well together. And they worked so well together that I decided to let go of the detail. I mean, I too am a bit of a control freak, and I have an appetite sometimes for a fair amount of detail. And I actively decided to let go of some of the management of the plan delivery, etc., and then to see how to see what happened. And to my absolute delight, the function carried on delivering. Right, it worked astonishingly well. There was a great team of people. They worked really well together as a team, and for the 9, 12, 15, 18 months after making that active decision, the detail in the plan delivery that I'd been, I'd had my sleeves quite rolled up and quite down the detail in the early years there. That plan delivery just continued, and it was really interesting. I recall making a really active decision with myself. I thinking, I'm just going to try this, and I hope it works. And if it doesn't work, it's on me. And it worked astonishingly well. I think if you were to go back a few decades, there was a belief that you had to earn trust to be given the space in which to operate independently. I'm not sure in today's career, job durations, tenure, that there's long enough to really do that. If it takes 6 months, 12 months to create that trust, I'm not sure there's really long enough. So I'm now of the view that trust is given rather than earned, and that pays back many times over.
Yeah, reading a great book by Stephen M.R. Covey, son of the great Covey, and 7 Habits, and in his book Trust and Inspire, and he classically says it is a bit of both, but it's mostly about giving trust. Yeah. Trust's embedded into your mind that these people are trustworthy and work it. But then it's for them to earn the trust that goes with that. And they did it in that case. Amazing. Paul, if people want to find more about you, get in contact with you, where would they find out about you a bit more?
The easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm very easily findable on LinkedIn.
So, Paul, delighted to have you on. Thank you for sharing. As always, a pleasure to hear the stories. And it's good to see the journey that you're making. So if you had to leave with one thing that you're working, and your Standard Chartered is 6 months in, what's the one thing that you're working on this year that you've got in your mind?
The one thing working on is purpose, strategy, the importance of us having a team view about the direction that we're heading in. And that we're all coalesced around that. So I would just say, having a purposeful goal, destination, etc.
Lovely. Paul, delighted to have you on. Look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you for taking the time today. So that was Paul Day. I love chatting to the guy. It's just, there's a history. There's a journey that he's been on, listening to that. But I think there's also just some of the things that he was saying in terms of the team, how he's organizing the team, how he's looking at the purpose, and the challenges we have in the world around diversity, inclusion, innovation, the markets, the challenges around what we're saying about the markets, about financial services, and then how we start to think about Asia and Africa and how Standard Chartered is a generator of prosperity for a lot of those areas. So it's an interesting conversation today to hear the third line of defense, as it's called, internal audit, from Paul, and then the story of the stand-up and the opinions and the views, and also the stepping back that he comes through with at the end around his experiment to give up control. It's fascinating to hear. So thanks for Paul for being on the podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll look forward to welcoming you in another episode of the Leadership Tales podcast very shortly.